to the first Pat Dooley show of the new season. We're in our 4th year. We've lasted longer than Star Trek, I think. But certainly everybody's ready. It's game week. I know you guys are all fired up. Even if you're not going to the Florida game, you're excited because we're playing college football again, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I've been going around to speak to a lot of the Gator clubs, Pensacola and Jacksonville, Panama City. I've been all over the place, and everywhere I go, it's kind of the same sense. It's almost like, hey, let's see what they got. You know, it's not this gung-ho, all right, we're going to be great. I think they all feel like it's kind of bottomed out, and that's a good thing when you think about it. For Florida to bottom out at 7-6, nobody else in the conference can say that they bottomed out at 7-6 over the last 20 years, because everybody in this conference, since expansion, has had a losing record. So Florida's the one team, if they go, you know, again, you hope they don't go worse than 7-6, but if 7-6 is bottoming out, okay, let's start back up. And I've said this to just about everybody I've talked to. Florida's going to be better this year. I have no doubt they're going to be better. How does that translate? Well, it depends on breaks. It depends on injuries. You can't, you know, certainly I think Will got enough bad breaks last year to last a lifetime. We kind of joked that he had a little Zook luck last year. And, you know, Ron Zook could not catch no breaks. And Ron Zook had 3 hurricanes at Gainesville. 3 hurricanes at Gainesville. We're inland. We're not supposed to get hit by hurricanes. And it cost him, of course, an open date, and that really was hurt him. And the players, you know, had that to look forward to. They didn't have to look forward to, so it really hurt them. So, and then we see Isaac coming this way. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's another catastrophe. But it veered off. Not good for New Orleans, but good for us. And so maybe this is the beginning of his luck changing. But I will tell you, Will is a lot more comfortable in his skin, a lot more comfortable around his coaches, a lot more comfortable around the players. I think he's more excited about this staff than the previous staff. And, you know, there's no doubt. We all know this. Charlie Weiss, home run on paper, disaster in reality for what they were trying to do. And, you know, he had a hip situation that I think added to that, made him a little irascible maybe, made it hard for the players to get along with him. But I think with Brett Peace in, he's got the strength coach he wanted. You know, he had 3 coaches he hired last year who he didn't know. He had been recommended to him, including Mickey Marotti. And Mickey Marotti did wonderful things in Florida, but I don't think he was right for what Will wanted. He's right for what Urban wants. And now he's got Jeff Dillman in here, and of course, Frank Verducci is another guy that was recommended to him, and he went and got somebody instead that he knows. So I think he's just more comfortable in everything. And I think any second-year coach is. That's why you see so many coaches in their second years do special things. Urban did it here. Steve Spurrier won the SEC, the first official one at Florida. When in his second year, you know, Tressel, I think, won the national title in his second year. That's why you see it. The first year, you're trying to straighten everything out. And you may have inherited a mess, you may not have. But you've inherited somebody else's players, somebody else's office, somebody else's secretary, somebody else's fans, and it takes a while to make them your own. So I think Will's a lot more comfortable, and of course, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens this Saturday, first game, Bowling Green. Bowling Green's a program that really went on into some tough times because of an APR issue they had under Greg Brandon. They got rid of him, brought in Dave Clawson, of course, who was a coordinator at Tennessee for a year, and it took him a while. He redshirted a ton of players 2 years ago. They went 2-10, took their lumps. But I talked to him the other day, and he said, we look like a Division I team now. So for Florida, you know, it's almost a perfect test. They're not bad, but they're not good enough to probably not beat them. Now, if they beat them, then we know this is not going to be a good year, I will tell you that. But Florida should handle them, and I think you know, just playing against somebody else is going to be great for them, because it's got to be getting old for these guys. Because we think about it, you know, everybody says, oh, we've been hitting each other for 3 years. It's longer than that. It really, since you go back to the start of bowl practice, which is a long practice, and then right through spring practice, and you've been hitting each other really with all but one game for the most part. So you're ready to go play some ball games right now. There's no question about it. This is a great weekend for college football. I'm excited. I can't wait to see what the headlines are. But I know Michigan stuns Alabama. Is that one we're going to see? And that's what's going to be a lot of fun, is just seeing all these things that we've been talking about. I'm so tired of talking about suspensions and all this other stuff. Talking about realignment. The 14 playoffs coming. Okay, yeah, well, it's not coming for 2 years. Let's quit talking about it. And let's simply go and watch some football. And we've got a huge weekend starting off. I'm excited about it, and I hope you're excited about it too. And I hope you're excited about watching the show again for another year. I'm excited, can't you tell? All right, that's going to do it for the opener. Right now, it's time to do the 3 things. All right, I've had 2 marriages, I've written 2 books, I have 2 daughters, I have 2 dogs, but I have 3 things. These are the 3 things I think going into the beginning of college football season. Number 1, if FSU isn't back again, can we quit talking about them being back? I mean, this is like Brett Favre and Tiger Woods all rolled into one. I don't want to hear that they're back until they're back. When they're back, I'll let you know. But right now, should they be back this year? They got almost all their defensive starters come back, very good defensively. Senior quarterback, yeah, they should be pretty good this year. Soft schedule, but let's wait. You know, beat NC State and Virginia and Maryland, those kind of teams that you always find a way to lose to. Until then, you know, I don't want to hear any more they're back. And if they're not back this year, then let's not talk about it ever again. Number 2, is this really the right way to handle this quarterback situation? Of course, I'm speaking of Florida. You know, they're treating it as an audition. Will Muschamp says it's not an audition, but it is. One player, Brissett, is going to start the first quarter and play the first quarter. Driscoll will come in and play the second quarter, and then whoever plays the best will start in the second half. So we basically will be sitting there, if it's not obvious, going, let's see who comes out. That's the guy who's going to start against Texas A&M. The only reason I question it is because it's college football. Crazy things happen, balls bounce funny, and do you really want to give Bowling Green incentive to say, hey, they're treating you like a practice game, not even a real game. On the other hand, I do understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to find out which guy to take to Kyle Field. But it's an odd situation there. And I'm also curious to see what happens if Brissett is quarterbacking and they've driven down to the 4-yard line and the quarter ends. Do you let them finish it out or do you bring in Driscoll? These are questions that will be asked on Saturday. And finally, I've been one of these people that did not buy into the getting rid of preseason polls because everybody, you know, we've heard, oh, you got to start October 6th or whatever. No, because it's kind of cool when you got a number 1 team and they're playing, or you have a matchup between number 3 and number 7. That just adds to it. But after this year, I may be ready to get rid of the preseason polls, and here's the reason. The coaches poll comes out, and like a week and a half later, the AP poll comes out, and it's exactly the same, except for all that switched was USC and LSU swapped spots because of Honey Badger being kicked off the team. You're seriously, the AP guys, the guys who vote on that, went right through it, and they never consulted the coaches poll, but it just happened to be exactly the same for the first 15 picks, and several of the other ones, including Florida at 23. If you guys aren't going to put any more effort into that and not going to have any original thoughts, maybe it's time to get rid of the preseason poll. It's just my thoughts. Those are the 3 things I think. We're going to take a break. When we come back, our panel will be here. Mike DiRocco from ESPN.com and Julie Quittner from GTN. Look forward to talking to them. We'll be right back on the Pat Dooley Show. All right, welcome back to the Pat Dooley Show, joined by my panel now, and it's probably the best looking panel we've had, although Mike's here too.
That half of the table, maybe.
Yeah, Mike DiRocco, ESPN Florida. What is it? ESPN Gator Nation? Florida Nation?
ESPN.com's Gator Nation.
It's something. And of course, Julie Quittner from GTN, and we're going to talk a little bit of Gators and a little bit of college football here on the Pat Dooley Show. I'll open it up. First question. Start with you, Mike. If you had to give me one guy that you would bet on is going to be all SEC for Florida at the end of the year, because nobody is preseason.
Right.
Who would that one player be?
Well, it's not going to be anybody in offense, so I'm going to go with Dominique Easley on defense, the defensive end. I think he's poised for a big year. I know he's coming off the ACL, but you know, just watching his first step last year as a defensive tackle and how much trouble that gave guys. Just moving him out to end, he's 285 pounds. He just looks so much stronger, so much leaner, and I think he's got a chance to really be a double-digit sack guy off the edge.
Yeah, you know, I think everybody's looking at him and Floyd both and saying, well, one of those 2 guys needs to live up to their hype, and they've been okay. Right. They haven't been.
They both haven't been playing at their natural position anyway. So maybe this year we'll see them both really take that next step.
Julie, if you had to have one Gator player that you knew was going to be all SEC at the end of the year.
Again, got to go to the defensive side. I'm going to go with safety Matt Elam. He was tied last year for interceptions,
Correct.
Only had 2. You know that number's going to go up. You hope that number's going to go up. He needs to have a breakout season this year. Defensive coordinator Quinn thinks he's going to have a breakout season, you know, heading into the NFL. First in pass breakups, first in tackles for a loss, forced fumbles. I think this guy's going to have a breakout season.
You know, last year he was a little heavy, and I think some of the coaches were talking about he's gotten his weight down too. Sometimes guys just get a little heavy, especially playing strong safety. You feel like you got to pack more
to play close to
power. But I guess I'm going to go offense. How about that? You just beat.
I can't wait to see what name you're pulling.
Well, I'm not going to give you a name. I'm going to give you like 1 of 5. Because here's my theory.
That's a cop.
I don't know, we could do that.
Yeah.
Here's my theory. Florida's offense is going to be better this year. Gillislee, Max Brown, Matt Jones are going to run the ball well. They're going to give the quarterbacks a little more time, and one of those offensive linemen, they're going to look at and go, and they aren't going to know which one. Because you know these guys vote. I've heard of that guy.
Yeah, coach can't vote for their own guys.
Somebody in the offensive line, I'll say Xavier Nixon, who's probably the best known.
Right.
Is going to be all SEC at the end of the year. Maybe. All right, we'll continue with the betting theme. And Julia, you've got $1,000 in front of you. You have to bet. You have no choice. You have to bet the over/under on Florida. The over/under on Florida is 8 wins. Well, which way you bet?
I really want to say 8, but I can't. I'm going to say 9, just because I just see them taking that step, and obviously 7 would be one up from last year, which we know that I don't think they're going back to. I'm going to say 9. I'm pretty confident they win 8 or 9 games this season.
And 8's a push, so you still got to play the juice. But
Yeah.
I think certainly when you look at this team, I've been telling these Gator clubs they're an 8-14, but as you know, things happen. I think they were an 8-14 last year.
Yeah, if Brantley's healthy, they'll win a minimum 8 wins. I'll take the over, and I guess that's because I'm making a leap of faith that the offense will be better. But like you guys, I kind of think it will be, if only because they finally got some guys to run the ball that fit what they want to do. And I also think that there's a couple of swing games there, like the Georgia-South Carolina games, to me are swing games. They're good enough to win both of them, just depending on how the offense does and how much that improves and how well they take care of the ball. And we're making a leap that the defense is going to be as good or better, and they're going to take the ball away a little bit more this year than last year.
They'd have to.
Right, 14 was terrible last year. So, I think they are an 8-4 win team, but I'm going to play the over because I think they can get to 10 if things fall right. And then you look at every team on their roster, on their schedule, seems to be losing a key player. So, I'm going to take the over. I'll take the odds there.
Well, the funny thing is with this schedule, the way it's set up, you figure you got your 3 revenue games, you're going to win those.
Right.
You're going to be Kentucky. Kentucky's still not any good. But that's the only.
Should be Vandy.
I'm not ready to give you Vandy. At Vandy, I mean, they've got a motto now, anchor down. So they didn't have a motto before. That was the problem.
But if you don't give Vandy, then you can't give South Carolina, you can't give Georgia, so those games.
So am I betting the under, I guess?
Looks like you got to win in 3 games, Pat. I don't know what to tell you.
No, I've got them. I think I've got them at 8-14. So I probably.
You have to choose.
Yeah, you said we got to choose. You got to choose.
Yeah, here's what I'll do. I'll take the over for this reason. Will Muschamp's luck cannot be as bad as it was last year. I mean, we had an NCAA rule put in because of one of the calls of the Rest Blue, the Chris Rainey rule, where you have to give a guy a yard before you can on a punt returner. And they changed the rule. The original rule, apparently, according to Auburn fans, is you could actually have your tongue in the guy's ear while he was trying to catch the punt.
That's a bad rule.
But I mean, it's ridiculous that call. But he had a lot of calls like that. So his luck changes. They win 9 games. How's that?
I can see that.
All right, number 3. Who's got a better chance to win this weekend, Mike? And of course, it's a great weekend of college football. Michigan, of course, plays Alabama, or Auburn, which of course plays Clemson. Both of them neutral sites.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be Michigan. I think I love Alabama, and I know that they lost a lot of guys on defense. But if you're not a believer in Nick Saban at this point, then there's something wrong with you. And I think Saban's got that team to the point where he's just plugging NFL guy into NFL guy. Run one right after another on that defense. And we all know how the biggest difference in the SEC from other conferences is the speed and the strength on the defensive line. And I think Michigan's going to have some trouble there. So I'll take Auburn, even though I'm really not in love with that quarterback situation there. I think it's
Kyle Frazier.
Yeah, I just think we watched 9 hours of bad quarterback playing that Florida Auburn game last year, it seemed like, and nobody was any good. So even though I'm not happy there, I'm going to say that Auburn's probably got a better chance to win.
Yeah, it's funny, Julie, because Clemson, obviously, without Sammy Watkins, another suspension.
Right.
I mean, it just seems. Does anybody not have a suspended player? I guess Florida doesn't.
Well, maybe Deontay Saunders, depending on how you want to look at that.
He's got one of those Steve Spurrier. He's got a hamstring. Yeah. Right. All right. So who do you like there, Julie?
I definitely think. I mean, if I have to choose between the two, I would say Auburn has the better chance of winning. I just think Michigan lost 3 starters on their defensive line. Bama's O-line and the running game is just going to be too much for that. I think that Auburn returns 10 starters on defense from last year, and Clemson again is without a huge playmaker in Sammy Watkins. They barely squeaked by Auburn last year at home.
At Clemson, all right.
So
Great game.
So now on this neutral site, I just think Auburn has a better chance.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the funny thing about it, again, I'll say Auburn because I think and I've said this several times, I think what Saban's going to do is what he did against T-Bone 09. Just don't let him beat you running the ball.
Right.
And that's the way they played it there. You know, but Alabama, you know, everybody says plug in NFL guy after NFL guy, and I don't disagree with that. But a great stat that I looked up the other day, when Alabama, the year after they won their last national championship, which of course was 2009, the next year they lost the 3 games they lost. It was I think the average gave up 29 points a game. So, and that was with the guys who got drafted here in the first and second rounds.
Yeah, they were young.
And
guys,
Marcel
obviously,
Darius.
Yeah,
They were young and they were talented. That's maybe
and
what they
there's
are
a
this
parallel
year.
here. I agree with that, but I think, you know, I'm just not a Michigan believer at this point. I think that's more part of it than anything else.
It is strange to hear that defense could be a question mark for an Alabama team. But
Well, and I'm a big, I mean, look, first of all, Nick Saban, if you've ever spent any time around him or been on the sideline over there, the guy's basically the DB coach. And he knows what he's doing when it comes to defensive backs. So that's where they really just keep plugging along in there. So not too much worry there. All right, number 4, which team coached by a former Gator coach will win more games this year, Louisville or Ohio State, Julie? You got Charlie Strong versus Urban Meyer.
I think Urban Meyer. I think Ohio State. They're a little older. I think that Charlie Strong, Louisville, they were young last year. Obviously, most of them are back. But I think Ohio State returns more, and I think you can maybe vouch for this, that Urban will get that offense, that spread offense with Braxton Miller going pretty early. And with the returning defense that they have, getting that offense going, I just see Ohio State being successful in Urban's first year.
Yeah, you know, I mean, what would be successful for I mean, what would you say for Ohio State fan would make him happy?
Oh, well, they're expecting to win a national championship.
Yeah,
To be honest with you, it's not going to happen, obviously. But I think if they're up around 9-10 wins, I think they'd be happy. But I think I'm going with Charlie in Louisville, only because 2 things. I think Braxton Miller's terrible. Watching him in that game
I don't disagree with
last year,
that.
and I saw something on ESPN of his spring practice, a little show about Urban spring practice, and just watching Miller, and he can't make the throw. He won't pitch the ball. I'm going to take Teddy Bridgewater and Charlie and Louisville. They're playing the Big East.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is not exactly a powerhouse conference either there, so I'm going to go Charlie.
Yeah, but they got to open up with an SEC opponent.
But they'll win the Big
In
East.
theory.
They're playing a BCS bowl. So.
What do you think? I just think Braxton is Urban's kind of guy. I don't
He
know.
might be.
And he might be, and that's the thing is and I have a segment we'll talk about later on the list about Ohio State. But my thing is, we saw them last year with our own eyes. It's one thing to see a team on TV.
Right.
It's another thing that we watched them practice. Remember the Gator Bowl? They would tell you, "We got to back up." Okay, I'll back up to 5 feet. Now I can still watch them practice. But we watched them practice, and I remember sitting there watching practice, going, "Man, Florida's going to beat them. I can't believe Florida's going to beat them." And Florida's not very good right now, but they're going to beat them. So we will see. We'll have to come back at the end of the year and see which one of them had it right. All right, and finally, what was the biggest off-season blow? Mike, we'll start with you. Was it DiRocco? Is it DiRocco or Derek? I never got that pronounced.
It's Rogers.
Rogers. Rogers,
Rogers.
the Honey Badger, or Isaiah Crowell? What's the biggest blow for that particular team?
I think, honestly, it's Rogers. I mean, that's really, I think Tennessee with Bray and Hunter and Rogers was one of the top passing combinations in the country, and losing them hurt because they can't run the ball. They've struggled to run the ball for the last several years. Losing the Honey Badger hurts, but that's an NFL defense, or defense stacked with NFL talent, and their front seven is fantastic, and that always helps on the back end. Now, granted, he was a fantastic playmaker and a great kick returner, punt returner, and it's going to hurt. Crowell, Aaron Murray's still flinging it around, and it's about the quarterback now. It's not about the running backs anymore, as we've seen in the NFL too. So I'll take Rodgers as the bigger blow, because look, that's pretty much the way they're going to have to win games, just throwing it around.
Yeah, and it's funny because last year after Hunter got hurt, and they weren't as good.
Right.
Because they only had one weapon to go to. But how about you, Julie?
Took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, I mean, they needed as much as they could get this team. Derek Dooley, obviously on the hot seat. He needs as much talent on that team as he can get, and Justin Hunter is now the lone star receiver. His name?
DiRocco Rogers.
DiRocco Rogers.
We'll go with DiRocco.
let's go with Rodgers. Rodgers is the top SEC returning receiver. He had 1,000+ yards last year. So I think that they're definitely going to miss him. I think that Georgia has enough behind Crowell to replace him. There's tons of running backs on that roster.
Then those freshmen apparently looking really good in camp.
Tons of running backs on that roster. Obviously, you can't replace a guy like Matthew, but they have depth there as well. Like you said, an NFL-style defense. Tons of guys there. And I just think that Tennessee needed as much as they could possibly get.
Yeah, I remember when the story came down, you're like, whoa. But with Honey Badger, you went, whoa, because I mean the guy was fourth in the Heisman finals. So, but I will say this: he wasn't a great cover corner. So you're going to lose those big plays, and that's going to hurt LSU as well. But I didn't include Michael Dyer from Auburn in here, Greg Reed from FSU. I mean, it seems like the summer of suspensions. The S in SEC stood for see ya. But it'll be interesting to see how much impact those guys have. Well, we appreciate you guys for coming in, Mike DiRocco, and of course Julie Quittner for being part of the first panel of the year. We appreciate you guys for coming in, and we'll be back with the list right after this. All right, here's our first list of the season, and this is an appropriate one. These are the 5 teams that are most likely to have disappointing seasons. And when I say disappointing seasons, that could be anything. Depends on what your expectations are. For example, my number 1 team is USC because they are the number 1 team. Anything but a national championship is going to be considered a disappointment for USC. The reason I say they are, I'm not saying likely, but most likely, more likely than others to have a disappointing season, is Southern Cal has got no depth. That's where the scholarship limitations have hurt them. They're a few injuries away from being, a 9-3, 8-4 type team, especially if one of those injuries comes at quarterback. So I think they've got a lot, and they've got flaws. They're not a perfect college football team. In fact, I don't think they're the best team in the country in terms of talent, but their schedule's a little bit easier than some others, and I certainly think USC's got the potentials there. And I know you guys are going, no, not USC. We love Lane Kiffin. Yeah, right. I get that. Number 2 is LSU, and it's pretty obvious why they're. Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger. You don't have him. You have to stop and think of all the huge plays that guy made in games. And they weren't games against crummy teams. They were games against Arkansas and Georgia and Oregon and West Virginia. That's when he made his biggest plays. So I think the loss of him as a punt returner and as a big play guy, he wasn't the greatest cornerback in terms of coverage, but the loss of him mentally and certainly tangibly is going to have an effect on LSU. And we're throwing a lot into the Zach Mettenberger experiment. Here's a kid who hasn't really played Division I college football yet. And he's their quarterback, and we're assuming because he's 6'5" and can throw the ball really hard, it's going to work out for him. So the potential is there for a mediocre season for LSU. Number 3 is Notre Dame, and obviously they're going to Dublin to play Navy right away without 2 starters because of suspension, so they've had that situation to deal with. And their schedule's pretty hard. And when I say hard, it's not SEC hard, but every week it seems like they're playing a team that could beat them and that really wants to beat them because they are still Notre Dame. They may not be relevant in terms of the college football landscape, but they're relevant for a lot of these kids who want to beat them. Maybe didn't get accepted, or maybe like guys at Purdue, or didn't get an offer from them. So, and I think the potential's there for this to be a pretty average season. Number 4 is Ohio State. Yeah, I know. Again, you're really disappointed to hear that. I think a lot of people believe Urban Meyer will walk in and work the magic right away, and he might. And I'm not saying that he won't, but I think the concern I have is that I watched Ohio State practice last year, getting ready for the Gator Bowl, and I certainly watched them obviously in the game, and they weren't very good. And they've lost players off of that team, but they weren't very good. And when I hear Urban Meyer saying that Braxton Miller's the most dynamic player he's ever coached, I think the ambient he's been taking has been affecting his memory. Because certainly, come on, Tebow, let's not even have that argument. Percy Harvin. How about Cam Newton? Was a lot more dynamic than Braxton Miller. He wishes he had Cam Newton on this team. So I think the potential, and when, again, it depends on your expectations. But for Ohio State, an 8-4 season would probably be pretty disappointing. No bowl game, lose to Michigan, all those things are possible. And number 5, I put Vanderbilt on this list. And the reason, and again, nobody's picking Vandy to win anything. Nobody's picking Vandy to be great. But everybody thinks Vandy's going to be a lot better this year, and I do too. I'm one of those people. And James Franklin's doing a wonderful job up there. He's out recruiting Florida and Alabama for top recruits, so he's doing an amazing job, and I think he's got to go in the right direction. But it's still Vanderbilt playing in the SEC, and it's still playing in front of, while they may have a lot more fans in the stands than normal, it's still not like going to the Swamp or going to Death Valley. So, you know, the potential's there, and I think 5-7 would be a major setback for them, a major disappointment. Again, I'm not saying any of these teams are going to disappoint. We know probably one of the teams on this list will disappoint, because that's just the way college football is. And it could be multiple teams that do. So we'll see. It's football season. I'm just so happy that to be back doing the show again, and also to be back watching college football. That's all I'm doing from Thursday to Monday. Oh yeah, I got to write too. But other than that, that's all I'm doing, watching football. Until next week, this is Pat Dooley, sports columnist of the Gainesville Sun, saying so long from the Sunshine State.